With the release of Star Ocean: The Divine Force, I've seen a lot of people express trepidation, primarily due to the previous game, Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, being so very bad. But is Integrity and Faithlessness so bad? Or are people simply being hyperbolic? Let's take a look, shall we? It's important to note that I'm not attempting to posit that Integrity and Faithlessness is some kind of masterpiece and throw around that word like many do. I am simply pointing out the game, at its worst, is mediocre and disappointing. Not total garbage caca, poo-poo, pee-pee trash, as many people want to claim. At its best, it's an okay and enjoyable, fun game for what it is. To be honest, anyone who finds this game to be trash is fortunate to not have played actual trash games. We'll start with the weakest aspect of the game, the story. It's serviceable, forgettable and can feel a bit aimless. Antagonists for most of the game sort of show up to be a boss fight and die. They're all comically evil, although I find this to be a case of so bad it's good, as they say some pretty hilarious things. The game definitely cannot be accused of taking itself too seriously. General Alma, the main antagonist, feels almost like a Dragon Ball Z villain. He's so over the top and ridiculous. A few times certain enemies or bosses' incompetence are played for comedy. Seems very self-aware. If you can enjoy Dragon Ball Z writing, I don't see how this is much different, really. However, if story is the single most important part of a game for you, then this still may not be a game you could enjoy. It's got tropes for sure, but as a positive there aren't really any moments of dumb decisions or leaps in logic. It's just serviceable, it's the best way to put it. As for the party members, some say they're dull and uninteresting. To me they're just fine. If you seek out the private action moments it really helps flesh out their personalities. For me, I'm mostly happy they're not super annoying like most of the party in The Last Hope and a couple until the end of time. Many story beats don't have cutscenes and dialogue just plays out in gameplay. People take issue with this, but it's no different from how JRPGs used to always deliver dialogue. I don't see the big deal. But in regards to the dialogue being delivered, it can sometimes be during a combat section where you could easily miss what's being said, so that's something to be mindful of. The cutscenes the game does have are fine, nothing stellar. There's a certain space battle that notoriously doesn't show the actual battle from the outside. We only see on the radar inside the ship and listen to the crew communicating. Honestly, if we were on the ship, that's how we would see it. I don't really need to get hyped up from seeing it. The crew frantically doing callouts is sufficient. It's simply not a deal breaker. The voice acting from the party members for the most part is standard dub quality, nothing horrendous. A few of the antagonists feature some less than stellar voice work. However, it's from characters who don't deliver many lines and it adds to the hilarious things they say, so it's not some excruciatingly terrible dialogue to slog through. Animator and character designer Akira Yasuda, or Akimen for short, did the character design for Integrity and Faithlessness. His work here is just as good and interesting as his other notable works like several Street Fighter games and Code Geass. The color palette of the characters is also lively, varied and pops, which I've come to expect from Star Ocean characters. I don't understand some criticisms I've seen in regards to the character design. They look great and are modeled well and detailed. Examine them closely and you can see fun little details like Mickey's charm dangling from her staff, Fiori's signature G markings on her body, Emerson's backpack and other things. Far better than The Last Hope Uncanny Valley creepy porcelain dolls. Fiori's costume raised some eyebrows, but she's no worse than certain characters in other JRPGs who let it all hang out. Great design work here, and great models. No question. The rest of the graphics look fine. Visual and particle effects in battle and locations all have a nice aesthetic. Lighting is solid. Areas and towns have a nice day and night cycle. Exteriors are designed well and provide the necessary immersion. Not top-tier graphical fidelity, but it doesn't have to be. I'll always prefer good art direction over graphical fidelity, and here I believe Tri-Ace made it work. Game runs smooth even during combat with everything going on screen. One of the constant criticisms of integrity and faithlessness is the fact you spend most of the game on one planet and only venture off to a space station for the climactic confrontation. I don't remember every detail of each game, but I'm pretty sure, with the exception of The Last Hope, the majority of each game is spent on one main planet until the late game. The Last Hope is the only one with any real planet hopping. Till the End of Time had a bit more as well, but that first planet you crash land on you only stay on for a hot minute, then depart for the second planet, where most of the game takes place. Even so, the planet traversal in The Last Hope wasn't anything all that special. The way it was executed, the areas you visited may as well have been different biomes on one planet. Integrity and Faithlessness may only feature one planet, but the various biomes you visit keep the environment fresh enough, just as fresh as any other of the games. You have the classic open green plains, seaside cliffs and caves, beaches, a desert, a frozen mountainous snow area, and of course hidden high-tech underground facilities. Integrity and Faithlessness is no more at fault for its lack of space travel than most of the other games in the series. It's only disappointing it wasn't the game to push this aspect further. You can't solely hold it against this game. When it comes to length of the game, my playthroughs average around 50 hours. This includes side quests, private actions and taking advantage of the item creation. It does not include the post-game dungeon. I've seen people throw around 20 hours as a common length for the game. I feel like you would have to be rushing through just to finish it and doing as little as possible. If you're doing that, you must not want to enjoy the game to begin with. When you engage with a game that way, every little thing becomes a huge issue. Even if the game were on average 20 hours, I don't see this as a problem. I welcome shorter games, even a JRPG. There's less time to play things as an adult, and I already have a huge backlog. I don't need every game I play to take 200 hours like my time with the Persona games. A nice succinct adventure is a breath of fresh air. It also makes replaying games more likely for me, as I do enjoy replaying games when I like them enough. As for content, aside from the main story, there's tons of side quests in the quest boards, the Welch Vineyard questline, the Cathedral of Oblivion optional bosses, the post-game dungeon, and the series' staple item creation to take advantage of, which is just as robust and rewarding here as the other games. It may actually be my favorite version of item creation in the series. There's plenty to do and a decent amount of extra challenge in the Cathedral of Oblivion bosses and the post-game dungeon. The combat is very much in keeping with the combat of the previous games, but the blindside mechanic introduced in The Last Hope is missing. Although disappointing, it's just as fun as it was in the other games. You have your light and heavy attacks, as well as 4 attack skills you map to both buttons. Hold the button to activate at close and long range just as before. There's also a block which you can use to parry or counter enemy attacks and leave them stunned for a few seconds. While locked onto enemies, you have access to a sidestep or backstep. Backstepping can be useful if you're up close on an enemy to quickly back up to get in range for your long-range skills. Cancel bonus also returns to boost DPS by inputting another attack while the character is in mid-attack. There is also a super bar that fills, allowing the use of a super move called the reserve gauge. It may only be 4 attack skills equipped at a time, but with 6 active party members that makes 24 skills. In addition to this, skills can be changed mid-combat, as well as roles and equipment. This is quite convenient. There's no reason to find yourself caught with the wrong setup in battle as long as you take the time to level up your roles to unlock more and more better roles, which are simply titles you equip to each character that boost some aspect of their stats or AI behavior. Basically 4 extra accessories per character. It's rewarding finding the right synergy between roles, as some might have a negative effect like the Berserker role, which greatly increases attack but also greatly decreases defense. If you equip the Dead Man Walking roll along with it, you negate the drop in defense, as Dead Man Walking makes the character completely invulnerable to attacks. They will however constantly lose health, but simply keep an eye on it and you're unstoppable. Many have an issue with the camera in battle. It's just become second nature for me to always be manipulating the camera, so it's not a big deal for me, though I can see how it could be. All party members acquired are active in battle, no members in reserve. I like this aspect and don't find combat too chaotic to be confusing or anything. As always, it's fun to break the game with not only item creation but this time around with the right combination of roles as well. Anyone complaining about difficulty spikes in this game isn't taking advantage of everything at their disposal, which is plenty.
Enemy elimination successful.
Consider the broken games that don't function as intended, the bug-ridden games, the constantly crashing games. Consider the games with paywalls, the live service roadmap games that crumble under their very structure as drip-feed predatory money machines that drain players' wallets and weaponize the feeling of missing out. Consider the games that betray a series' legacy and change a series' entire genre without the content or gameplay to justify it. The games that attempt to pass off some mobile game as a mainline entry to a classic series. Consider the games incompetently designed, unresponsive or stiff controls, poor optimization and performance. Now consider the games that, despite failing in some aspect as a game, garner a cult following. Games with interesting ideas perhaps, but awful execution or gameplay. Deadly Premonition is painful to play. Terrible controls, terrible audio balancing, music choices that clash with the scene, completely dull combat segments that feel pointless. But despite all this, the Twin Peaks homage and quirky dialogue, performances and story make it worthy of being called a gem to many. How can some games that have incredible faults garner love and respect, but a game that doesn't so greatly fail as a game be considered bad? Star Ocean 5. Integrity and Faithlessness is designed competently. It has no performance issues. It has no game-breaking bugs. It has no paywall or predatory structure. It has the hallmarks of a Star Ocean game and doesn't betray that. The private actions, robust item creation, mix of fantasy and sci-fi, Welch Vineyard, post-game content. What it didn't have was appropriate time or budget. At the end of the day, it's a mediocre game. It has flaws for sure. It excels at nothing, but also doesn't completely fail at anything either. It's disappointing. It could have been more, it could have achieved new heights for Star Ocean, but it didn't. This hurts, but that doesn't validate hyperbolic descriptions of its shortcomings. Disappointing is not synonymous with bad. It's also absurd to suggest to people a game isn't worth playing, as long as it's not broken or bug-ridden. We all have different tastes and tolerance for jank. Many games I love some would say aren't worth playing, like Final Fantasy VIII or Death Stranding. I'm going to take some stranger at their word? I think not. I can't change anyone's mind, but I can call out hyperbole. Integrity and faithlessness deserves a modicum of respect, not lumped together with actual dumpster fire games. It's not bad, and if you give it a solid chance, if you really take a step back and think about bad games and you objectively come with an open mind, you might come to appreciate it. That doesn't mean you'll come to love it. We don't have to see everything in extremes. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.